Man, how funny are the Yardley twins, huh? They're like, whoa, they don't need any more of that. They got plenty of that during their set. All right. No, I'm just kidding. They're amazing. Mac told me, he was like, hey, bro, I'm getting twins for the show. And, of course, me as a guy, I'm like, oh, hell yeah. This high school bucket list fantasy's coming true tonight. And I got here, and it was the Yardley boys. And I was like, well, it's not what I signed up for, but a bucket list is a bucket list. So. Drink a lot of wine, boys. It's going to be a long night for all three of us, you know? Josh, you can watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. Today, you are in for a treat. We have double trouble for you. Today, my guest on the podcast is the Yardley boys, Jake and Alex Yardley.
Hey, what's up?
Welcome. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks so much for having us, man.
This is awesome. Thank you for asking us to do this.
Yeah, man. You guys, from the first time I ever laid eyes on you guys, your guys' energy on stage, it literally is double energy. Like the way you guys do it, because there are twins. I should introduce that you guys. You guys are twins. If people aren't watching the video. There are other comedians who are twins, but like you guys have such like a boom pap kind of thing where it's almost like a hype man almost at times, the way you guys kind of work together. You guys do it seamless.
We've been described as a lot of golden retriever energy, I would say.
Really?
That would be a lot of energy coming at you.
Yeah, we actually literally have a bit too called Hype Man, where we just hype each, because we've watched ourselves on tape and been like, it kind of feels that way. So then we have a bit where we just like, all right, let's lean into it fully, and then just dial that all the way up, turn the volume up on that kind of.
It's so good because the way you guys do it is, it's like one is like the meat and potatoes of the bit, and the other one's kind of just adding these throwaway lines that are just like, oh, it makes it so good, man.
That's awesome you describe it that way, because we'll sometimes talk about it that way in like when somebody's driving, the other person is just kind of adding some salt and pepper, as we go, and then as the bits go, back and forth, we kind of change who's the driver, quote unquote. And sometimes the audience picks up on it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it can confuse people where they're like, who do I pay attention to?
It is a nice balance, because I have seen that, because I'll like watch you guys. Obviously, comedians watch other comedians as like, you're trying to see how it was made kind of thing. And I wonder that, because I think about if I was in that situation, I'd be like, how do you balance out so this is like an equal partnership of like, now we're switching to the driver's seat, how do you guys figure that out?
It's a lot of trial and error. We've been to a lot of open mics. I've been to we've done like open mics where at the end of like, like a 5-minute or 10-minute open mic set, I'll just be like, I am so sorry, I talked the whole time. I went on my rant. I was full of rant juice, and I just didn't put a period on it. My bad, man.
I get to the end, and it's happened both ways, but I'm just like, we got to do another one because I want to say something. I actually want to do stand-up tonight, so.
Do you guys do a lot of improv? Like with open mics, you guys are usually improvising a lot of it?
Depends. It depends. Sometimes we'll go in with an idea, and we know just general talking points, but as far as like the verbiage, we don't usually have like rehearsed lines until it's a really fleshed out bit that we've done a bunch. Because then we know all the like punchlines and the lines to hit. And the kind of setups for it, then it becomes way more refined as far as like, I'll say this, he says that. But that just takes a long...
That's like a 6-month bit. Usually it's like 6 months, or like some of the bits that we know word for word are the ones you've been doing for like over a year or so. And then the other ones are like, if it's brand new, we're like, talk about this like enigma of an idea, and it just feels a lot more clunky rather than other ones that feel like a play where it's like your line, my line, your line, my line, back and forth.
It ends up kind of being like a conversation. Like each joke is somewhat like a conversation we've had a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like and then we just try and keep it new for one another. which kind of adds to the joke each time. So like there's some points you want to hit that are just like the main direction of it, and we're kind of like talking about that, and then each time we're like kind of trying to add which is fun because then we're adding and the other person's like, oh, like
yeah,
there's like a slight line that's different and you're like, only we can pick up on it because we've seen it so many times. So then it's like, it kind of just adds juice to it.
It's a joy. It's like the joy of like something finally a little different. If you said the same joke over and over again, it just kind of gets stale. But if he adds a little bit of spice to it, something I hadn't heard before, it's just like, it's a little exciting to hear and to do the bit and continue doing it.
That's something that happens with comedians is like bits get, after a while, once you've kind of polished it and it's like hit almost a stale place, you almost get tired of doing it. But then like you have to figure out ways to always expand on it. Have you guys been writing in quarantine?
Well, I've been doing like bits and ideas, but they're not like traditional stand-up. I keep thinking, because I haven't done stand-up in so long.
Oh yeah, we were talking before. You guys asked me before how long it's been since I did stand-up. How long has it been since you guys have done stand-up?
Well, we've done a couple of Zoom shows. But I don't really count the Zoom shows. It doesn't mean it's not the same.
We've done some new material, like we've done that, but we haven't done a live mic since it's coming up on a year now.
Oh,
so,
same.
Yeah, so it's coming up on a year, and then the Zoom thing, and we've been doing Twitch too, which is a comedic outlet.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Do you guys game on Twitch, or do you guys just kind of talk to the chat?
Yeah, we game, but it's kind of like we just want the format to be like, the game is something to hold the attention for a little bit, but it's kind of like an open dialogue with whoever tunes in at that time.
Okay.
So kind of like an open podcast is our hope that it becomes.
That's
something.
great crowd work skills and development. Just reacting to a chat. What game are you guys playing?
We were doing this game, Civilization. It's for the PC. It's a great game. It's like, I always describe it as like Risk on steroids. So very like strategic. You're kind of like, it's slower pace in that it's turn based. There's like a map, there's a board or whatever. But then we also did during the football season, we were doing like football highlights. So we'd react and we basically do like our own version of, ESPN or like Sports Center to all of the football highlights, and then we do predictions, and like we would keep our respected records of our predictions throughout the season.
And we did like, we love fantasy football. So we would do like, oh, this is a great guy to get in fantasy football this week. Like,
so you're giving picks and everything.
Yeah. Just because it's just a huge, we played football like in high school and like, in our childhood and stuff. So like just have always loved football. So
I think we talked one time after a mic about concussions and everything, and you guys were talking about your football career. Was there anything, being twins and playing football, did you guys ever do the whole swap thing? I know this is the dumbest question you guys get. Is swapping.
It's also the most common. Don't worry.
Yeah. It's low hanging fruit. I apologize.
No, you're good.
So we've never, in football, it was a lot of times, because you have the number on, our coaches would just call us Yardley, our last name, and then, or 24 or 44, our respected numbers at the time. So there was not a lot of confusion because of the jersey number, but it would be, sometimes they'd line us up across from each other. Like if we were either starting cornerback, so if you're a quarterback looking to throw the ball, you'd see like the same guy on either side of the field, just like 24 and then 34.
Very symmetrical.
Yeah.
They're like, I got a concussion. They're like, I need to get off the field.
I'm seeing double out there.
Yeah.
Like, we need a sub. I know who to go in.
Yeah.
We got a backup.
How is it with you guys athletically? Because are you guys competitive, or you're like, this is the wall that meets the, that like old thing where it's like the wall that can withstand anything versus the
immovable object meets the
are you guys
unstoppable force? Well, I just am more athletic at everything. So it's just
I say we get pretty competitive. Like recent, like it was football, like most of our lives until high school, and then after that, we're like we talked about kind of at that mic or that show, is concussions are scary, so we stopped playing football. It didn't want to bang our heads into the other players in college because it's so much even more dangerous. 4 years of that. But the next athletic outlet that we got competitive about is running. So like we ran a marathon. So we competed to beat each other. He did win, but like not by a lot. I really stiffened up the last.
He was just waiting for it. He's like, "Come on, ask for it."
Come on.
Yeah,
our back and forth in football was always. I played offense and defense, and then he had a pick six, which is like the play of all plays in football as a corner is to have a pick six.
Yeah,
and so I always go back and forth. It was like I was playing the whole game, and he was like,
but I've scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's always the back and forth. Yeah.
Man, yeah, you guys were talking. What was it a show? The last thing you did before quarantine, or?
We did that wine bar show is the last thing I keep remembering.
That was a blast, and that was thinking back, super spreader event. That was packed, small room,
like low ceilings, so you hear all the laughs really quickly.
Probably like
you hear all those like productive coughs, just like stuff in there.
You can feel the germs hitting you.
Yeah,
you spread them back.
Did you guys? That's what's crazy is I realized that, and I was like, oh man, there was a time where I was like, all right guys, thank you, and that was the last time I did it. It's just like I didn't know at the time.
And you didn't know it at the time either.
Evan, what was your last show? Do you remember the specific one, or?
Man, I kind of can't remember now that I think about it, but I know that the week of that they actually canceled all outdoor all shows together, like live events. It was my most booked show of all, or most booked week of all time. I had 5 shows lined up, and I was like, I'm on my way. I was starting to delete old childhood friends' numbers from my phone. Like, don't need to talk to you guys anymore. I have new friends in Hollywood. And then
it really went regular.
Yeah, it really went completely to my head. I was like, I'm done. Threw my phone into the ocean. But yeah, and then I just remember being so bummed out. But it was funny because Joe Rogan put out a thing. He was like, due to the new restrictions, I have to cancel all my shows because of 150 people or more can't be in an event. And I put the same post, but I was like, due to all my shows haven't been canceled because of 150 people or less. And that was literally like the last live comedy related thing, and I literally thought, and that's the thing is there was a lot of back alleys. There's still back alley stuff going on. And
there's tons.
It was like in the beginning everybody thought COVID was going to kill everybody. We were just like, oh yeah, we're all going to die. And I just felt like such a pussy DMing show runners and everything and being like, hey, I don't think I can make it, and they're like, well, the show's still going on. I'm just like, bye, can't make it, sorry. But yeah.
We came from Phoenix. We were Phoenix for 7 years doing stand-up. And so a lot of my feed and stuff is people still
never
in
stopped.
Arizona. They had like 2 months of like lockdown, but then they did the outdoor shows immediately. Yeah. They have been business as usual for the past 7 months or so. Like just same thing as it ever has been.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of crazy is we all know, like they were like, the quarantine, the lockdown's not working, obviously, but everybody kind of knows that everybody's not following it. Everybody's like, okay, yeah, well, it's not working because everybody's doing everything, but like, it's just been crazy, man, especially for comedians, people who want live performance, How have you guys been coping?
Yeah, a lot of hobbies. I'm a much better cook now. I can cook much better than I ever have because I can't go out to eat. I realized how much of my both diet and my budget was like bar food at like, the Comedy Store or like at these, shows that I try to go to get on.
Yeah.
So a lot of my budget was just like takeout, a lot of or fast food.
Yeah.
Now I cook a lot more just because it's cheaper and I'm kind of getting better at it.
It's so cheap.
I've been coping that way. Yeah.
I've turned into such an old man because I'm just like, this meal right here, this costs you $40 in a restaurant. I made it for $7.
Yeah, the meat was half off. You're like, what? I don't even know if you should eat that.
Like it kind of smells bad though. Maybe you shouldn't eat it.
I came home, I got this huge thing of like tri-tip. And I was like, Alex, look at this thing. This is $10 off. He's like, ew.
Yeah.
Why was it $10 off?
Yeah,
Ask yourself.
I guess that's not a good thing to brag about.
Yeah.
Cheap meat.
I've been playing chess. I got into chess in quarantine.
Now, did you get into it before?
I
You
was,
know what show I'm about to ask you about?
Oh yeah, Queen's Gambit.
So
Queen's Gambit?
I did. I was dabbling a little bit before.
Okay.
And,
All right.
And then Gambit came out, and I was like,
You're
oh
all
my
in.
God. A lot of people that are going to be new to the platform. I'm going to really boost my score up this way.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Your brother just wake up and see you in the middle of the night pretending, looking at the ceiling, just
Like,
taking
is he
too many
I don't know
Tylenol
what drug it
PMs.
was. Is he on tranquilizers again? God damn it.
You're just like, Jake, that's ibuprofen. Stop. Stop.
Just crushing up ibuprofen.
Yeah.
Saving
Shots
it.
and NyQuil.
Yeah.
Man. Have you guys, besides Twitch and everything, have you guys tried it? Listen, like the Zoom stuff is hard. I feel like you guys are better at it because you guys work off of each other's energy. I feel like you just can't do the format the same, like it's stand-up. Like you have to kind of be like, this is a completely different form of comedy, you know?
Yeah.
I've been actually producing a lot of shows for, like we said, we're from Arizona, and there's a production company that's based in Arizona. They were looking for people to help with their Zoom shows to try to keep doing corporate events.
Yeah.
So I've been producing a lot of corporate events. And
No way.
it is a very weird, like you said, medium, because the feedback is so different. It's not that
Sparse.
live. Yeah, it's sparse, and it can be really distracting because you think, like, I've seen comedians where, like, to set the stage, it's like 100, maybe 150 people from this one company. And then there's one comedian, and it's a Zoom call with all these little windows, and just one guy I'm spotlighting and making sure I'm muting everybody else that has, like, a cat that's, like, meowing or purring into the microphone, or, like, people that are doing their dishes and it's kind of clanging, so it distracts. So, like, it's been a very, like, tedious learning curve.
I haven't even thought about that aspect of it, the producing side of the things you got to deal with on the fly.
Oh
yeah, it's
early on too. Like it's crazy because like traditionally, like you get a heckler and they're yelling out at you, and then the people in the front can kind of hear. The people in the back are like, "What's going on?" But then like now with Zoom, someone like sneezes, they're like, "Achoo!" And then everyone is like, "What?" It's louder than the comic, you know?
Yeah.
Like just the volume of just ambient noise is just amplified.
There's not as much power for the comedian because they're not the only person with a microphone standing on a higher platform in a room. It's now like everybody has the same amount of, I guess, liberty to speak. And so then it's just a lot less power for the comedian, so a lot less control for the comedian. So they just have to be like, who just tackled me? And then look at all the little mini
there's
screens
like,
and be like, okay, I'm about to tear you apart. You ready? I'm going to tear you apart.
And in the meantime, someone else says something.
Yeah.
You're just trying to pick up objects in their background to make fun of.
Yeah.
You're like, what's that weird vase? Oh, that's your dead husband. I'm sorry, man. We're just going to move on.
Honestly, the best comedians I've seen, like the best sets I've seen happen in these like corporate Zoom shows are like comedians that do exactly what you're saying, is like they'll like pick up on the vase in the background and then be like, well, Carol's got the vase, and then like everybody is so excited that they like are being seen, you know, in a time of little human interaction the past, year or whatever.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because you can't really look at it as just traditional comedy where you're just doing your set and pretending that, like, you have to just kind of talk about it. It's like when something breaks in a room, like a glass falls, and if the comedian doesn't acknowledge it, everybody's like, what the fuck? What is this now? Like,
What is?
acknowledge that, please. You know?
Yeah. Otherwise, it's very distracting.
Yeah.
They're like, are other people seeing this? Are other people hearing this? Or like, especially with the ambient noise. It's weird though, because the flip side of it is like, I've been in productions where everybody's muted, and it's just the comic talking into a void.
Yeah.
So it's just dead silent. And they're like, and that's why dogs love peanut butter. And then people are just like, what? And like, you can see some people are laughing, like other people are like, but you can't hear it. So it just sounds like a bomb every time. So there's this weird balance where like you need some people unmuted for some type of laughter feedback. But not too much that they're distracting.
I've had some people give like company lists of like pre-show, like pre-production. They send you a list of people that are allowed to be unmuted. They're the laughers.
Oh, okay, got it.
And so they're the people that like are trusted to not have technical issues, and they can kind of laugh vocally on. So it prevents that problem of a really quiet bombing sound.
I thought you were gonna say a list of like facts about certain people, because I've heard those stories before, and they always end terrible because they're like, "Hey, where's Jim at with the cocaine problem? I heard you cheated on your wife," and then it just like goes so terrible.
Like, it's always so great with the corporate events, especially like around the holidays. We did a bunch of those where it's like companies want to do like holiday parties, and so and it's always like the HR goes and like to the comic and they're like, here's some facts about the CEO, like here you go, and then that guy has no tolerance for jokes whatsoever.
He's just looking at you
like, oh boy, this is
man. Just trying to use you as a medium to say everything they've wanted to say for 10 years. And you're a piece of shit. Yeah.
But they also don't want to be seen laughing at them. So they're just like
oh, man. That's crazy. I didn't really know that, because I know corporate comedy, but I didn't know that corporate Zoom comedy was going on. Do they pay decent for like what they are?
So it depends the company. It's all like individual contracts, so it's like independent contracts, so the negotiations vary, so the pay varies. But a lot of them are like, at least the last couple have been like holiday parties. So it was people I guess want to see a live performance, but Zoom is kind of weird. But if it's a holiday party and they're like, oh, we were expecting this holiday party, it was like a good substitution and a good pivot during quarantine. So that was a busy season, was like December. And then even people that did it into January, like a late holiday party. But then after that, it kind of tailed off. It's been much lower besides those 2 months.
There was some cool events, a couple of them, where like to make it a more full experience, they hired like not only the comics, but they hired someone to do like cocktails. And this guy was pretty good. He like had, I think, an assistant and like 2 cameras. So the camera is like him here, and then another one of like his hands and all the ingredients and the way to like make the drink and stir it. And so he did like holiday cocktails, and so like he would go, then a comic would go, then he'd do like another drink or something.
And then you could like make the drink along with him. So you were making the drink for the comedy show. So that was like a cool idea.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if a lot of this stuff is staying after quarantine, like these different mediums that we kind of were forced to create. I think we'll have to adapt in some way, right? Like, I'm sure, will you guys stay on Twitch after everything opens up?
Well, Twitch, I think so. I like it, and Twitch is it's interesting. Like, you're not going to build a following on Twitch. It's really for like maintaining and creating. Like, so you can you can do a game is the most common thing, or whatever kind of stream you want to do, and then usually most people will like cut it up, put it on YouTube. People find you that way, and then they go, I like this person, I'll go watch them live and interact with them. So I think that's something that'll stick around. As far as like traditional stand-up, some of the production people that we work with and the people that are in Arizona, because so many comedy clubs were closing. We had some friends that are buying comedy clubs, and with in mind like having a Zoom platform, they wanted to have like this hybrid type platform where the stage is like a live stand-up comedy venue, but there's also cameras set up to stream it live. So you kind of get the hybrid of like you're simultaneously doing your live show, but you also have that Zoom comedy show that someone on the other side of the country can watch you, and pay like a discounted ticket price,
Yeah.
do like $5 and you get to see this stand-up.
And it might not be Zoom, it might be like Facebook Live or whatever
Right.
the platform, but it's still just like a streaming component to it, like
Yeah.
a hybrid component to it, which I think is pretty cool. Like I think what a great way to both promote and to just have people be more included in the show. Maybe that'll encourage them to then come to a show,
Go to a
in
live
the
one.
future if they're in that part of the country.
That's pretty awesome. With stand up, it's hard with like bits, because it's like once your bits are out there, man, your bits are out there. Like they don't hit as hard. But no, I think that's great. There was a spot I would go to all the time in Ventura, and they were starting to do that where they were gonna they had this huge. I don't know how they got this deal, but they were gonna have like live streaming all over the world from their spot, and it was like I think he bought it was like $15,000 camera setup thing that he was supposed to live stream it all. But then COVID hit, and I was like, we gonna do this still? And then, but they had to shut down. But it seems like that's definitely around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Could you guys imagine live cameras in the Comedy Store, and you could just I don't know if you guys surf, but there's like surf cams where you can go look at the waves, and you could literally switch between the belly room, the main room, and you're just like sitting in. You pay a fee to be there for the whole night. It'd be so amazing.
But do you think that would change the comedy of it? Because I feel like a lot of comedians, especially at the store, I feel like the history of it is it was like this, and I say this in like a loving way, it was a filthy place. You were allowed to be filthy and say filthy shit and work out your crude ideas, kind of. But then if it's streamed live, if you fuck up and say the wrong thing, it's like more fear for a comedian, I feel like, to speak freely.
That's the other side of it, is that would be the pushback, is these are bits that just are being worked out, and they're going to get canceled. They say something that's funny in the context of the room, but then it gets printed, and it's just like, ugh. Yeah.
Then it would kind of turn into all of the live streamed events are people on their A and B material, where they have to go and find other shows for their new material. They're C-list kind of
the
still percolating room.
The workout rooms kind of
Have you guys been in, because I know you're in Arizona, that's why I asked you guys about the time difference. I was like, isn't Arizona an hour different than...
Well, we're still in LA.
Yeah, we're in LA actually.
Have you guys been here the whole time?
Yeah.
During the apocalypse?
Yeah.
How has it been being in the heart of it, man?
Boring. Yeah. Just chilling. No one's doing anything. Everything's just closed, and it's been closed, and it's crazy because it's we have family on the East Coast outside of Philly, a lot of friends from Phoenix and Arizona from our time there, and so just seeing friends and family being closer to normal, and then having to just be locked down basically has just been just so boring of just staying at home and just kind of hanging out. I've gone up to see our moms in California, Central Coast, California. So we've been able to go see her and do some weekend type outings. So that's been great just to get out. And you went back a little bit too.
Yeah, I went back to the East Coast for the holidays, which was kind of a weird. I was really nervous to do it, but I got tested before and then also after. So anyone before and after the flight.
Yeah.
So anyone I was in contact with, I saw my grandfather, so I didn't want to put him at risk, especially coming from LA. So I made sure I was negative before seeing him and stuff. So, but that was very interesting. Being back home again outside of Philadelphia, so Pennsylvania, it was odd because they were worried about state restrictions because New Jersey is a little different than PA, and they're right next to New Jersey. So they're okay, New Jersey has open dining right now. Maybe we'll drive there for the night, stuff like that. Where California, West Coast states are bigger, harder to get to different states. So you're just kind of stuck in California being whatever they say is what happens. There's no other options really, unless I want to drive, 4 hours or 5 hours, something like that.
Are you guys going to stick it out? Are you going to stay in LA? There's no plans on moving or anything?
Yeah, I think, honestly, it's funny because there's been this exodus of California and everyone went to Texas, and now, unfortunately, Texas is... Are you there now?
No, I'm moving to Austin in a month.
Oh,
yeah, dude, congrats, man.
Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah, so
man.
I mean that's happening, and like I feel like
all those
so many-
pieces of shits just jumping ship on us.
Well,
For
I'll
us-
miss you, but
Yeah,
for
you guys
us,
come
I mean,
visit.
it's- I like it because I'm like, okay, great. There's less people here now. You
Exactly.
know, like, and for me, like, you're from California, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
from. So, like, for us, it's like for me, it's like this exotic, fun place that I
Exactly.
wanted to end up at. Where I think if you're from there, you don't have that as much.
That was a big thing. I actually had this revelation like last week because like I've actually been wanting to move back to Texas. I lived there in 2017 and I've been wanting to move back, but my girlfriend and I were like, why don't we move to Ventura for a bit and then we'll go to Texas. And now she's my fiance, and so it's like,
congrats, man.
thank
That's
you,
awesome.
thank you. Quarantine does some weird shit. You're just like, well, if we make it through this shit, might as well. But I haven't had that experience, and maybe that's why I felt so like there was no big moment for me where I was like, I'm going to LA and I'm jumping both feet into this, you know. And it's like Austin kind of is that, where it's just like I'm going there and I'm just going to completely engulf in stand up, and it's just like it's that exotic thing. It's sexy, you know. And
Yeah.
I drive into LA, I'm like, oh, I grew up like an hour away from here, you know, hour and a half. It's just, all right, this is kind of weird. There's a lot of homeless people, and it's like, there's nothing sexy about it, you know?
yeah.
Did you ever see, or did you ever read The Alchemist or whatever?
No, it's one of those books that I know I was supposed to read, but
It's just like a hero's journey of like, he goes on this huge journey. He works into this place. He goes like thousands of miles only to realize like he comes back to the spot he started his journey to realize that's where the treasure was or something. Basically like metaphor for like, you have to go through this transformation. There's a part of me that's like, I'm going to end up back in Philly at one point. Like, I went to Arizona for 7 years. I lived in LA, and then I'm like going to end up back there and be like, oh, it
was here the whole time.
Need anything. This whole time.
open up this restaurant. Yeah, I'm just going to live here. It's cool.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely something with that, with like needing to travel and like get out. Like it just forces you to grow, you know?
Yeah.
Was that kind of a culture shock when you guys went to LA? Because I've never actually lived in LA for the reason I'm like, oh, these people are so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like,
how was that
it's
change?
like uber progressive.
Yeah.
It's like, it's aggressively progressive.
It really
Like,
is.
that's fun.
Oh, that's
right.
That was
Ooh, look at that. That's a
Aggressively
bar right
progressive.
there.
I'm writing it down. I'm writing
Bars.
it down.
But it's just like, yeah, it's funny because it's like you get like, even people like, you'll be, people like I don't know, I've seen people like Inglewood or like people that are like from the hood, like they'll do comedy and then they'll be like, yeah, man, like, you know what? They could still have rights too. Transgender. I'm like, what? This is the most progressive shit ever. Like, I have people that I like have degrees in college that are like, quote unquote progressive, that are like not this progressive. And I think it's just being around California. There's so many people that flock to LA and they flock there and then they have to get together to like coexist. So then it just forces such like, you need to be progressive because you're forced to interact with those types of people, where it's like, if you're in a small town, you'd never have to interact with those people. So then it's just very clearly ignorant because you're not interacting with different minorities or whomever.
I think also like just cities in general, like LA is obviously one of the biggest cities in the country. So just more people, there's more people. When there's more people that you have to interact with, there's a higher diversity of like decorum and, open-mindedness that I think you have to have, because there are a lot more people with different perspectives that you have to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
Rather than just everyone here is just like me, like you'd kind of see in a small town, like Jake's saying. So like, I don't know, I think that's pretty status quo among large cities is you see people that are better at handling different types of people because that's their environment. They flock to the city to be around people, and thus they're better at being around people, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely, most cities are democratic, liberal. It's just weird, like the way that always works out. But I think LA, and I was starting to work on a bit about this, that like LA is so progressive because for some reason, like it really is the mecca of people who are mentally unstable who want to be famous. They're like, and not only that, they get paid, a lot of them get paid an unfair amount of money to play pretend. So it's like, you come up with the weirdest, ideologies because you get rewarded for it, and then it turned into like brownie points.
I have like, so I got a degree in theater at Arizona State, and I noticed that like sometimes we talk about like what it is that we're doing, right? What are you doing on stage? And you're acting honestly within imaginary circumstances.
Yeah.
Like that is.
I read that book. I know that line.
Yeah. So like, I think people take that to the extreme, and they're so used to living in those imaginary circumstances that they then that bleeds into the real life, and that's where sort of the mental instability I think comes from. Is that like these people are so attuned at listening to others, like either a director or the audience, and catering what it is that they want to do around that they then create those imaginary circumstances in their own life, and their sense of reality is warped a bit because that's sort of their job in a way, is to warp your sense of reality a little bit to whatever the script is or whatever the director is telling you. So I don't know. I think that institutes a lot of that that type of behavior, and then also them getting, like you said, getting rewarded for it. Like kind of the more out there you are, the more interesting you are, the more clicks you get. Especially in this era of like, you want to be clickbaity kind of, or have like headlines come up. So that's unfortunately an incentive for people out here.
Plus you get, I think to what you were saying originally too, where it's like you get so many people with just massive egos that are like, I'm going to be famous. And then it's like they want fame for the sake of fame and money. And you're like, oh my God. And you're just dealing with all these people, and they have never worried about talent. They could care less. They just want, or like the art or whatever it is they're doing, if it's comedy or acting or whatever, some type of other artistry. It's like they're just there. They're like, what do I have to do to be famous? Tell me what I have to do. And there's no shame either.
Oh, that's huge.
I also heard this quote. I think it was like a podcast where I want to say Rob Lowe talked about fame and getting famous. And then he mentioned like, whoever you are when you get famous,
you get locked
you're
in.
Like frozen in time. It's like a carbon copy of yourself, because then what happens is companies, people that will pay you, sponsors, audiences, all know you as that thing. They like that thing or that character. And then you're rewarded, and your livelihood becomes being that person. And especially for kid actors, that really explains like that
it's arrested development.
De-incentivized. Yeah, you're de-incentivized for growing up and maturing. Because you're like, if you grow up, you no longer get money, we no longer like you. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
Dude,
what are we...
Especially child stars. That's got to be... I feel like that should be illegal. Like, I don't know. But it's such... I struggle with that, with like the idea of fame, because if there was some way to get a salary for joke writing, and obviously like being in a writer's room, but like getting the reward of stand-up without the fame side, I'd be interested in it, just because it's such an unhealthy thing. The amount of eyeballs and attention you can get, and then you put that on a kid, it's like you're always trying to fill that hole of like, once it starts going away, once you're that child star, then now you're not getting the attention, and now you need to get your fix, that high. So that's why usually they end up on drugs or alcoholics, and it's just like,
if that's your baseline, it's such a high baseline. You know, like to live at such a high dramatic degree, to then anything after that, like being on set, being on posters and movies, or having a huge audience clamor for you, and then to just try and be normal again, you're like, what a drop off, like what a crazy drop off, because you didn't grow there. You didn't grow with like nothing. You grew with everything.
Evan, do you know Bo Burnham?
Oh yeah, I love him.
Have you heard "Art Is Dead"? That one song he has.
Yeah.
But it kind of speaks to this this sort of conversation of like, he has a line in there.
Is that the outro? That's the closer, right, on that set?
That was "Make Happy," right?
Yeah,
the
Make Happy, but I don't know if it was the outro. I think it was just one in the middle.
I just remember it was like, artist dead. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so people think you're funny. How do we get those people's money? And
Yeah.
it's a lot of it too. It like the beginning of the song is about being a little attention attractor, right? Like as a kid, you're an attention attractor, and then you get addicted to that. So he talks about the addiction of attention.
Yeah.
For him, and like as a performer too, as performers are, they become an actor or comedian because they're addicted to attention, and then they get paid to indulge in their habits is one of his lines. So like same sort of thing that we're saying here, just kind of reiterating it through Bo Burnham here, but like just being incentivized to get fully kind of addicted to attention and however you can get it, whether it's like, I feel like you could see people that are too far gone, like the people that are just like whatever they can do to get in the tabloids or to get into, you know, like a cheap magazine or something.
Yeah.
Because they're just fully addicted to like attention. And when that goes away, I think that also bleeds into what we're talking about of like the mental instability and then also the homeless people out here. Like it's all one and the same. It all kind of leads to these sort of those are the problems of that kind of model.
Yeah, that is something, and you guys touched on it a bit, is when people come to LA, a lot of times the end goal is fame, which is that attention. Whether they, you know, something messed them up as a kid or something happened, but they try to look at any art form as the vehicle to get them there. And they don't care what it is, because one week they're an actor, and then one week you see them on a comedy show and their name's Chara now. Not calling out any Chara. I've never met a Chara. I thought it was a safe
We'll go
choice.
at you, Chara.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Hashtag cancel Chara. Okay, she's not really in it. That's something that's hard to deal with, because I feel like it kind of goes against being a stand-up comic. Is when you see people that don't have self-awareness. I'm like, I don't think you could be a comedian if you don't have self-awareness. Like, you're gonna hit a ceiling, because it's just, you don't have that observational thing in you, and you know, those people are just hard to deal with. I'm sure you guys are around them a lot.
Well,
Oh my God.
It's also like, I feel like as a comedian, either you're hyper aware, like you have a hyper sense of awareness, or it's the opposite where you have no awareness, and then people are kind of laughing at them, but then that's part of the show, so it's okay for that. So it's like justified as like, oh no, I'm making them laugh.
It's a character. Yeah, it's a character.
Oh, yeah.
That happens too.
So like, I feel like there is either end of that extreme that people go to pay for to see on stage, and is someone that's really aware and knows exactly who they are, or somebody that has no idea who they are, but they just are themselves, and they just can't help but be themselves fully.
Also, being in LA, doing like lower level like open mics or like just random shows where anyone can kind of get on in LA versus especially like Phoenix where we're coming from. You get it in both, but it's just a higher degree in LA where you get people going there for just like cheap therapy. Like they're going to vent, and they're like, I don't know if it was Louis C.K. got really famous doing like this like honest, weird, gross kind of thing, and it's like, oh, you know, isn't it crazy how like fucked up this is? And like, I feel like there's a whole group of people that follow that, and they're like, look, listen how fucked up I am, and you're like, please stop unloading all this.
Dude,
this isn't a joke.
$5 at Fourth Wall is cheaper than therapy, man.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yep, you said it. Nail on the head right there, man.
And you're like, after I'm exhausted just listening to like a night of like, you know, 5 to 10 of those people that are just like, here's what I'm dealing with. This is why my
They just got
dad
something to get off
loved
their,
me.
Yeah, just
And you're
get
like,
something off their chest.
like, oh God, I just want to talk about dog humor.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think I'm funny anymore. I'm not. I can't do this tonight, guys.
Yeah. And then they look at you and you're like, you're not real. You're not authentic. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude,
We're trying to do like a hype man
We're here
bit.
for different reasons.
I'm trying to do a hype man bit, and now I got no energy.
I'm here to make
Yeah.
get some people laugh and have a good time.
Dude, and then those people, when you're up doing your set, they're like this.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they're like, you're hacky. They're like, oh, I'm hacky.
Yeah, no. I appreciated paid rooms in the sense of like, if they're, because LA, for people listening who don't know, there's so many comedians in LA, it's hard to get nightly spots where, you know, on some nights I'd try to hit like 4 or 5, you know, sets, and it would be like you would have to pay for some of them. But then you're only in a room with other comedians, which is like, I don't know about you guys, but like I usually hate doing comedy for comedians because I'm like, I feel like, I don't know, I'm showing magic to a magician. And you're like, okay, yeah. Like, right. But I appreciate those places, but it's also hard. And they just, after a while, you start feeling dirty. It's like you fell in love with a stripper and then you know she's wanting money. Like she's there because she's getting paid. Yeah. And it's like, that's what it feels like doing comedy for comedians, you know?
And if you learn and grow in that environment, you just become insanely raunchy. And then if you ever try and do an actual audience where it's just like normal people in an audience, they're like, oh my God, this guy is so vulgar and like I'm so offended by everything. And it's just like,
because it's a room full of people that are desensitized to the joke. So it takes extreme things to make them laugh. And then there's extreme things like Jake's saying, it's just like way over the mark, past the mark for, you know, just a regular audience on like a Friday night that got their kids a babysitter and, you know, want to just have a fun night out.
Yeah, they're trying to unwind, not hear about school shooter, incest, bestiality jokes.
You know? That's a tame night. That's one set.
Sprinkle a little racism and the N-word, and then it's like, oh, you make a comedian laugh at that.
Yeah. I feel like Alex and I, whenever we've done those rooms, we're at least very aware that those are the environments we're going into. So for us, like, luckily there's both of us to talk about and keep each other somewhat sane in that environment and that the temptation of like trying to do well there. But usually our expectations are like wildly different versus an actual show. Like an actual show, you're like, I hope this room crushes, everyone laughs. In those ones, I'm like, I hope they laugh at this silly dog bit here. Like I hope they chuckle or just kind of grin at it. Because if this like fucked up sensibility, if that person laughs at this joke and it's a silly joke, then I know it's amazing because anyone's gonna laugh at it because it's not like controversial, but it also makes controversial people laugh. I'm like, this is gold.
Like it's clever enough. Yeah,
those chuckles from a comedian or belly laughs from, you know, a regular audience. Like there's a conversion rate there of like, oh, okay, couple chuckles here is equivalent to like killing at like a regular, you know, 50-seater or something.
And it gets you used to bombing or becoming okay if you do start bombing. Because the first time I went up it wasn't Fourth Wall, it was another one. And I bombed and I let the bomb affect me where I didn't realize what the room was. And I remember, dude, it got so bad, I forgot my bit. I got like the fucking deer in the headlights because I was like, oh, they're not giving me anything. These jokes worked last weekend. Oh my God, this is going terrible.
Yeah.
I literally forget my bit. I try looking at my phone. My finger's sweating. So my fucking ID won't work on my phone. And I'm like, oh my God. And it was brutal. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, you guys don't laugh at anything. Okay. All right then.
Is that you think your worst bomb you've ever had?
Oh yeah.
This is always fun stories. Worst bomb stories.
Man, worst bomb. That probably, I don't really count those as bombs in the big picture because I'm like, it wasn't a live audience, you know.
I've got one that's always a fun story of in
Phoenix.
Let's
hear yours.
Yeah, in Phoenix, it was this show. It was our good friends. They ran this weekly show. It was at a bar. They'd usually get anywhere between like 50 to like 150 people like every week. So it was really fun. A lot of local comics would go. They kind of hit open mics throughout the week. This was a Thursday night. It was a play on John Oliver's show, you know, This Week Tonight. It was called This Week Sucks Tonight. So it was two of them. They would go through like a slideshow of like all the different like news events from the week, and they'd just do jokes. They'd kind of roast. And then in between some of those segments, they'd have comics come up. And what they would do is like, they'd have good comics coming through that were like there for the weekend. They'd have them do their sets for longer periods of time. Or they'd have comics come in, and if they were doing poorly, the two of them were on stage the entire time with mics. So they would start to ask questions and roast the comics at the middle of their sets. So you have 75 person room. There's like 2 people with microphones bullshitting you and like trying to shut you down this particular
That's
night.
like a super heckler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Two hecklers. Yeah.
And I was probably like a year and a half, 2 years into stand up at this point. I went, did the show, and I was going there. My girlfriend at the time, her and her sister were like, we
broke up that night.
My girlfriend at the time, she was like, my friend I work with wants to do something tonight. We want to come see you. And I was like, this isn't the room. Like, it's going to be really vulgar, and they're going to be like really bullshitting. They're like, no, it's fine. It's going to be fun. And it was like her friend, her sister come to see. It was just me.
Yeah,
we go up.
We do stand up separately sometimes.
Yeah.
This was
Okay,
just Jake. Yeah.
I go up, and then I have like 1 or 2 jokes go okay, and then there's one joke. It's like a newer joke I'm trying to like work out, which I should not have in that room, and they just found a moment to sneak in and like do some jokes, and the audience loved it, so they just kept going, and they eventually started rapping. It got to this point where they started rapping a 50 Cent lyrics. And the entire crowd is losing it. The 2 of them are doing it. And I just go, all right, thank you. And they just rapped me off the stage. And I was like, all right, that's my time. And I was like, I have no control. They have all the I was like, this is it. And then I got off, and I'm driving home in the car with these 3 girls, my girlfriend, her sister, and her friend. And they're like, they shouldn't have done that to you.
Oh, man.
And I was like, I was fully aware that could have happened. I'm so upset you came.
That's crazy.
It was horrific.
That's not too bad, though. That's not too bad. That's not the deer in headlights.
Yeah, it was. And it's not like the audience kind of luckily got distracted, right? Like the attention just shifted, and they were like, oh, but like they just kind of were like amused by them afterwards. So that was slightly better. But anytime I think about bombing, I'm like, yeah, well, I could get wrapped off the stage. So,
how quick in your set did you bail out? Like, did you have a 10-minute set, or what was it? And you were like, I'm done at 5.
Probably like 10, and I probably did like 8.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad.
It's probably something like that.
I did. I got asked to do this gig in a movie theater, and I was like, okay, cool. And then a cleanish comic was like, yeah, just try not to have it be too bad. But then when he came up to me before the set, I need to leave out some details of this. Okay, so I didn't know going in there. It completely changed when I got there, and it was for basically senior citizens. And it couldn't be anything. I couldn't even bring up race. I couldn't bring up like anything. It was the most crazy strict guidelines ever. And all I had was nothing that I prepared, because I usually like go over bits and I have like the set list out and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I just go on. It was like there was a stage in front of the actual movie screen, but like the lights were on and everything. And there was a crowd of all old people. So I start doing my set, and they're not really laughing at all. And then a lady starts having like an asthma attack thing in there with her oxygen tank, and she's going to full
like cardiac arrest,
full like one of those like productive coughs where she's like and then just like how you have to acknowledge a glass falling in the back, I have to acknowledge it. And I'm like, man, these jokes are that bad, huh? And then it doesn't go well at all. They start thinking I'm just this mean guy who just, and she's like, she can't help it. And then I'm just like, And then on the other side, sitting on the other side of the aisle is someone with special needs who I didn't know.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And they start making noises and everything. And like, I just completely went in there with no idea of what really was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think I said something just like, man, this isn't going good, is it? To the person. And then they start going like, saying what to me because they can't hear me. and then another old guy thinks I'm talking to him, and he can't hear me either. And what's terrible about it is I didn't really know. It's always bad when you don't really know the other comics like on the show, but they all know each other, and you're the outsider. And they're all watching this happen, which is the worst part for me, because I'm like, oh, I can't handle this room. Like, this is going terrible. And I probably ended up doing only like 4 minutes of 10 minutes. And it was one of those things where I'm like, all right, guys, thank you. And the host of the show wasn't in the room, where you end up having to wait. And you're just like, all right, guys, thank you. And you're waiting for the host to come out, and they're like not in there. And you're just like, and you like put it there, and then you wait, and then I end up just doing that slow, like off the stage, walking back up, and I'm like, all right, guys, you guys have fun.
The host runs in.
Yeah. It felt to me probably more terrible than it was, but it was just like, right. I think a bombing is just when you're being affected by it. Yeah. Because if things are going terrible, but you don't care, I don't think it's a big deal. It's just like, it's not working, everybody's going to bomb. But it's like, when it gets bad is when someone in the crowd sees that it's affecting you, and they feel bad for you. That's like the worst. You're just like, oh, man.
So can I ask, how many people were in that room?
It wasn't a giant show. I don't know how they all got there. It probably was like 40 people, I would say.
That's still a
lot of old people.
Super spreader.
Maybe none of them heard it. Their hearing aid was off or something.
It's just like, comedy in places where it's not supposed to happen is just,
oh man,
it doesn't go well. You know?
Have you ever done a show where it's not booked as a comedy show? Like it's like booked as like, you know, something else. But music, then but then somebody's like, what do they do? Why are they talking on stage? And you're like, what? Do we all not know I'm doing stand-up? Like
that was the other one I was going to say if I didn't tell that story. Because I feel bad telling that story, because it's just like, there's so many. Yeah, I just feel bad. But one time I got booked on this show where the guy was like, hey, can you come open up this show for us? And I'm like, yeah, cool. What is it? And it was like this venue that danced things and everything. And he was like, it's a flamenco show. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You're going to get this. I told him, I was like, you're going to get the stereotypical Latin guy, Lopez. Okay, yo, I'll come open your flamenco for you. And I go there. I got there late. I forgot what happened. And I have to literally, I don't know what jokes I'm going to do. I'm writing out my set in the back. It's a room full of 150 people. There's no raised stage. And it's just, I'm on the same level of them. And because it's like a dance room. And he's like, the guy gives me the mic, and he's like, all right, go up there. And then I'm like, okay. So I'm in the back of the room with the mic, and I'm just like, all right, we got to get these people hyped. And I'm like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Like, blah, blah. And they start clapping. And then I start doing jokes, but they're not laughing. And they're just like, what is happening right now? And like, some people are starting to chuckle because I'm like kind of starting to do crowd work because no one's laughing. And then about 5 minutes in, and they wanted me to do like 15, I just go, did you guys know there was going to be comedy? And they were like, no. And then like, I'm like, oh, okay. And I was able to kind of like bring it in then. But then I'm looking over, and the dance recital's like ready to happen. And there's like little kids waiting to like do their flamenco. They're like in their little ballet outfits and everything. And it was just, the environment was terrible. And it's like, I'm doing dirty jokes for like people there to see their kids, and their kids are like, what does that mean? Yeah. It was just crazy.
Oh, yeah, that is brutal.
The story that comes to mind for me is it was my first ever paid gig. And again, this was just me. This was just being like a part of the theater department at ASU. So it was like a big, it was the traditional Middle Eastern holiday of Eid. So it was a room full of 300 traditional Middle Eastern men in like hijabs and full, like my buddy was a photographer. He just told me, dude, I got you paid gig. And I was like, yeah, like, fuck yeah, this is my first ever time to get paid to do comedy. And it was a whole festival where they had like a luncheon. They had speakers come up, and the whole thing is in Arabic. It's all in Arabic. The event is in Arabic. The speakers are all in Arabic, and
then you come up.
So I was like talking to some of the people, like trying to, like, during the lunch, and I was like, talking to them about like the different coffees, like they had, specialty coffees that they had there at the event. So I'm like learning all this stuff before I go up. And again, it's like, this speaker in Arabic, and then Arabic, stand-up comedy, Alex Yardley. And then I like run up to the stage, supposed to do like 15 minutes. Everybody just looks at me. It's just dead quiet. And I had a couple, like, I'm pretty proud. I had a couple like bits that landed about the coffee. Like I was like talking about like, and like I talked to some people about how they greeted each other by kissing, like on the face. So I made some jokes about that. Really, really enjoyed it. It like went really well. And then I got too confident. That was like my first like 3 minutes of the 15 went well. And then I would go, okay, now I'm going to start talking about me. I start talking about myself and the game Backgammon. That was my bit at the time.
Oh, man.
And they don't know the game. They don't give a shit about me. They just immediately arms cross and like, who the fuck is this guy?
Oh,
like,
man.
Why do we care about this? And then I just was looking at a sea of hijab, 300 like traditional Middle Eastern men and like varying age ranges, but like, just all crossed arms, like, what is happening?
Oh, man.
And then after, so it bombed pretty hard, but then I just kind of muscled through it like it all went great. I just pretended like it all went great.
Yeah.
And then
that's all you got to do.
And then afterwards, I went to the guy to get paid. Like I hadn't got paid yet, so I have to go to him, and I look at him and go, I did stand-up comedy. I need to get...
I crushed.
I need to get my money.
Coffee? I talked about the coffee.
Yeah. You remember me, right?
And he goes, how much? And I go, however much you think I deserve. I looked at him right in the eye. And he actually paid me. He paid me like $150. And
that's a solid gig.
Yeah, and he gave me a real. So I still have that real. It's a Middle Eastern currency.
Oh.
So I have this little dollar bill that real that I have on my desk.
First earned dollar in comedy. Yeah. First earned currency.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have gone much worse, but I'll tell you what, the last 11 minutes or whatever it was truly excruciating. Like me telling my jokes, punchlines, I'm nailing the punchline and just utter silence. Just nothing but judgment.
Dude, maybe they thought you said Afghan instead of backgammon, like Afghan. Yeah. I love Afghans, They're like, oh no, my friend, this is over.
We did our hometown. We rented out a theater. It was probably like 250 or so people, and we had like friends and family we grew up with, and we had like one of our best friends. He is just like a drinking buddy. We played football together. We were like one of the guys kind of guy. He's in the middle back, so he's like a bunch of rows back, and we get like a minute in, and he just starts yelling like inside jokes from our childhood. And so we can't really like address him because he's just yelling things that only the three of us understand.
Yeah.
So we're like,
remember that weird night?
Yeah. So it was tough.
There was also that similar thing of in your story of like us being like, what'd you say? Like, what did you say? And then he like repeated it, and then we go, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
And then he just went silent. I think he was embarrassed. Yeah. So there was this weird like, huh? What?
Yeah.
Okay. Just like,
and then we'll just have to get back to our material.
Yeah, ruined our rhythm there a bit.
Yeah, man. I also did a show at a cancer treatment center, and that was rough.
No.
Now
you're telling me that wasn't a lively room?
Let me tell you, I killed.
No. You're telling me you get the call. You're like cancer treatment. You're like lively bunch.
Dude, I just have this rule, especially, and maybe it'll change the more success I get. I'm like, I don't really want to say no to anything.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'll do that at least once. Like, I'm not going to become a regular on the cancer treatment circuit, you know?
Yeah.
But
Never know.
there's just those environments. Like, that's why I've kind of, during quarantine, I haven't really done Zoom shows, and I haven't really done like outside gigs, at least if they're in a public park. If it was like an outside like amphitheater, and it was like, these people are here sitting here to watch this, they didn't just walk by and there's comedy going on.
Right.
Like, I'm down for that. But I feel like comedy needs to be in such a safe space, as the kids call it, in the sense of they need it. Like, you need a certain environment. And I'll tell you, boys, a cancer treatment center is not really the energy you're looking for.
I am so surprised. I would have thought, top of my head, I go, cancer treatment, top 3.
Yeah,
Top
a lot of
3
energy.
environment.
I want to hear more. Like, were they far along in their treatment? What kind of audience was it? Was it like a big audience? Was it like at the hospital?
It was in an actual treatment center in like Thousand Oaks. So they had some money, but older crowd, maybe 40, 50. It was done in like the rec room or something.
Right.
You know, again, your same eye level with them.
Yeah, that's always weird.
Yeah.
Any kind of just clean comedy for me is hard. I can do it. Like, I think we did a charity benefit together. I think that was for something.
Was that you mean the wine thing?
Yeah, that was like for the Boys and Girls Club or something.
Yeah, it was at the, not distillery, the winery or whatever. It was.
I just remember all the barrels. Remember all the barrels in that room of wine that they were holding?
Did you guys have a Donkey Kong joke?
About the barrels. Yeah, that was just like, I just made it up on. I think you made that one.
Fun
up.
riff.
Yeah. I was like, they got it before I got it. All right, they can have that one. That's usually my go-to joke whenever I go do a winery and there's barrels. It's like, we got to mention these.
Yeah, you got to bring. I feel like you always have to bring up either if it's like a themed event, you have to mention it at least a little bit, and then immediate environment. If there's anything you can kind of latch on, it's always fun to like. Makes people feel like it's for them. You know.
Yeah.
They're more on board with you.
It's like that feeling of being present. Oh, he's really here. He's not just doing the act. He's like he's actually. He probably wrote that right now, and they have like more leeway when you do that kind of improvised thing, or at least it appears to be improvised. People are like, "Oh, he's making it up right now. This is great."
Always my favorite. Some of my favorite parts of stand up, especially when I'm missing it. I miss even more of like. When we go to a bigger show, and I love watching the comics that are like 1 or 2 in front. My favorite spot is usually like third, and letting other people kind of warm up the room, but they're not tired yet. You know?
It's a sweet spot.
It's a real good sweet spot, and I always like being in the room for those first 2 because you get to see things. So like the barrels or whatever, or if other people's like the other comics material, see what's hitting. See what's not hitting, and then either commenting on those acts too is always really fun.
Or that like one audience member that got too loud in the first, right? You're like, oh, do we got a troublemaker here? What do we do?
Daryl's here in his fedora.
Whatever. That's one thing I love. It's especially hecklers or people that you know are just going to be a problem. If you can start building material against them like 15 minutes early before you even get on stage. And it just seems like it's off the cuff, but you're like, I'm going to nail this motherfucker. As soon as he steps out now, bam, surgical.
Yeah, and you know if he takes it well, you can kind of come back home to that. Like if a punchline lands, you go, am I right, Daryl? Or whoever it is, and like, you know, keep using them as a fixture in the show. But then by the end, people are like, I feel like I know Daryl or whoever it was.
Daryl's not so bad. Yeah. Man. That is such a crazy... That's why I love stand-up more than anything else, is because there are so many different elements of it, from the writing, from reading the room, lassoing in the crowd if you're one of those earlier sets. Like, I'm sure you guys have opened shows where you just have to cold open completely without a host, and it's like, that in itself is even a different art form.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I feel bad once. That show that we were talking about with our hometown, with our buddy in the back. I felt bad because we'd been in Arizona. We had been doing stand-up in Arizona. And so we hadn't really gone back to do stand-up on the East Coast. So we didn't know any real East Coast comics apart from a couple. And they were actually based in New York. So they were probably like 45 minutes out. So we booked 2 more veteran comics than us. They're probably like 5-ish to 10 years older, and they had been, doing New York for a while. And
Definitely better than us, but we were headlining.
Yeah, but we were headlining because it's our hometown. Everyone knows us.
As you should.
We booked them, and I made the mistake of like, this is our first like producing and performing. At least it was the biggest production we had done. Not maybe the first, but the biggest. And so I'm worrying about like the audio, the venue, the like ticket sales, making sure that's happening. So like
family members that want to come to the show. Like,
and so like that is all happening. And then there's the actual comedy of it really took a hit. In retrospect, I look back and think, I wish I focused more on like the comedy, the show itself, because we booked the one guy, a really nice guy. His name was Richie. We booked him. I was like, hey, can you open? And he was like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. And this is, weeks, months ahead of time. And we get there, and I go, hey, if you want to open, and then just introduce all of us. He goes, oh, you want me to host? And I was like, oh, that's what I thought I was telling you when I said open. And he goes, I thought there was going to be a host, and then I would be the first comic, and then the host would go. And I was like, no, it's you. And he was like, he was livid.
He was so pissed.
Because he had a cold 250 people in this like auditorium, basically. And
he just took a train in from New York to come our hometown, which is like small town.
And it was just like, he was like, Jesus Christ. So he was, oh my God, he was so pissed. And I learned very quickly what the difference between hosting and open are.
Dude, I love hosting for the experience. It's just, again, having to go up in between each comic and like try to say something funny, but also not turn it into a bit to where you can introduce the next one. It's just, there's so many different art forms within comedy. That's crazy.
Yeah, we used to, there was a comedy club in Arizona that gave us Tuesday nights. So we'd run the Tuesday night show there. And it was a show where the audience would pick who won, like who was the funniest.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would host open and just tell everybody the format, but then also try to make them laugh a little bit. And it's a Tuesday night, so it's not like a big crowd. It's like a half-filled, if it's a good night, comedy club, because it's comedy club seats like 150. There's probably 30 people, which would be good on a Tuesday, but it's a big comedy club, so it feels like there's nobody. Yeah, everybody's sitting away from each other. Yeah. So we would host and open that, and it always felt like dead air. Like it was like dead air because it's a Tuesday night, big room, not a lot of laughs, and then we also had to drum up. Who do you guys want to go to the next round? And do like, I'd pick, put my hand over somebody's head. This guy, let me hear it. And then, or this guy, let me hear it.
Tuesday night, they're not feeling audience participation.
So you try to drum up audience participation after every round. And so that was a whole nother skill in itself of like, how do we like get them to participate, but not too much where they get burnt out by the end? Because we'd done it a couple times where we're like, oh, they really participated in the beginning, and then by the end they're like, whoa,
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, okay.
Damn.
Like we just want to, we don't want to be putting this much effort in, basically.
Yeah. How much producing have you guys done? Because it seems like you guys have produced a lot of comedy. Is that something that you guys want to do also? Is just keep growing, Yardley Boys Productions?
Yeah. For us, I mean, we both even went into college being like, we're gonna do stand-up and we want to do stand-up and comedy. And so even throughout college, we were there and we joined the stand-up group immediately. There was a stand-up group there, ended up running that. And I think production has always come from like, how do you get more stage time? Well, you have to like give to the community early on. Like you have to make things. And it's always this bartering of like, I'll put you on my show if you put me on your show. Yeah. And it was always like, it was early currency of like how to get booked on better shows that aren't open mics, they're not paid. And then on top of it, you really learn to respect the people that do produce shows. Because it is, trying to like wrangle cats, some comics where you're just like, they're like, I just want to show up and do, 30 minutes. You're
and
like,
I'm going to be stoned the whole time.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, great.
Looks like you guys have worked with Chara also.
Exactly.
We're just dead naming Chara here.
Yeah.
We also most of my college experience was we produced a show. It's called Tempe Late Night. Tempe in Arizona.
Oh, you told me about this. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So a lot of it was like an example of us using that currency is we'd have comedians in the in the Phoenix community,
Whole Valley.
Yeah, come to the college and do the in between sets. They were fluffing sets. So in between different shots, we would have comedians come on. So that became a good room that we ran at a young age. So then that's what helped us get onto stages earlier on, right after college, because we had relationships with some of the comedians where we could be like, hey, we have the stage time for you. And they're like, okay, cool, come do our show.
Oh, nice.
So that was sort of like kind of how we got started. And that's how we realized, okay, there's value in running a show.
Also,
so keep doing that.
Learning to produce when we were first starting, and there was just the guy that ran the stand-up. It was every Friday night, and we would just get booked, every so often. Like once every couple weeks, we'd get booked on this, and his hosting was our first experience to stand up. And his hosting was like, he was older than everybody. He kind of came back to college, and he would just run this thing. And so he was like mid-20s when everyone else is like 18, early 20s. And he would use the in-between to do full 5, 7, 8,
15 minutes,
9-minute sets in between everybody.
Every Friday.
And we just were like, oh, that's what you do. That's what hosts do. That was and so we got this like bad habit early where like, that's what they do. And then we went to other shows and realized we're like, holy shit, he was holding the audience hostage most of the time. Mm-hmm. And that was very respectful of hosts ever since then.
Dude, that's a pet peeve for me. Is when a host will end up doing like 40 minutes throughout the night.
Yeah. And just really 5-10 minutes each time.
I have such a good story here.
Let's hear it.
I don't know if it was our first comedy club, but it was remember Howard Hughes, Jake?
Yeah.
He was a club owner. And
he was featured on Bar Rescue.
Yeah.
The show.
Hell yeah.
And he came back. Because,
local legend, huh?
Yeah. But his style was he ran the club and he booked it, but he would also host. And his style of comedy is he would bury himself in a hole and see if he could get himself out. And he wouldn't get off stage until he got himself out. And so we had him on one of our shows, like the Tempe Late Night show. So it was like a relatively bigger show. Had him on.
Like 100 college kids in the audience.
He was supposed to do 5 to 10 minutes while we set up everything, all the scene and the cameras and everything. And then, we give you the light, get off. He did 40 minutes. He did 40 whole minutes because he dug himself in a hole and was trying to dig himself out for 40 minutes because it's like these like young college kids that are easily offended. And he's like a grizzled, late 30s, early 40s comic kind of guy. And none of it's landing.
Yeah. So the whole time we're like, light.
Nobody could light. We just have to wait till he's done because he's not listening to the light. He doesn't care at all. And then we went to, so again, us trading, stage time for stage time. We gave him that stage time. So then he gave us stage time at his club. And we go to his club and he goes, you guys want a drink? This is like your first time doing comedy, right? Yeah, we're like, yeah, it's like our first big show. Whatever. Yeah, like our big comedy or big comedy club experience, first time. And he goes, let me get you a drink at the bar. He goes over to the bartender. He goes, hey, the guys won,
three shots of tequila?
Yeah, no, three margaritas. It was like cocktails, it was tequila. He goes, yeah, let's get 3 margaritas. And the bartender turns around and he goes, Howard, I told you, your tab is frozen. He had rung up this huge tab and never paid it.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't let him get it. So then he keeps haggling the bartender of his own club. Like,
we're in between.
and we're like, we don't need the drinks. It's
We're like,
fine. We don't
water.
need it. He was, no,
Water
you
with
guys
lemon.
are getting the drinks.
Yeah.
You guys are getting the drinks. And so we're just waiting there. Eventually, he like worked down the bartender, and the guy goes, "Fine, I'll make some margaritas. Like, I'll make these drinks for you." And he gives us all the drinks. And so we're sitting there. He goes up on stage, and we're at the bar
With the bartender.
with the bartender, like, thank you for this.
I would have been like, sorry.
It's just like the bartender was just over his shit. He like wasn't mad at us, but he was like just over it. And that was like
Oh,
our
man.
club experience. We're like, all right, we're comics now.
Yeah, this is what comics do.
Yeah.
How did the show go at that club?
What did he say? I remember him doing. It was all right. We were still really fresh in our like. We had come from this college audience, right? So we just were like-minded audience members that were like late, like 18 to 22, and so we went, and it's like now people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and so there was just that disconnect that happened.
Yeah.
Where you're like, all our references aren't landing. The jokes still did okay, but like all the in-between stuff, like the heavy punchlines hit, but it people were like, oh, there's the punchline. There's the punchline. There wasn't the like, we weren't hitting as well. And he comes in
After.
he comes in after, and what did he say? He goes, look at those fucking chins. They were, he said, he goes, they were, he said they were conjoined twins. They were joined at the chin when they were born. And then they had to, and he just starts, and we're in the room, and audience is like, oh my God.
And there was a moment where Jake and I, also early on doing the duo, we have to get on the same page, so we like look at each other, and like one joke didn't go well, so we're like looking at each other like, what do you want to do next, kind
Yeah,
of?
what's the
next move? But I guess it read to the audience and to this host. He goes like, "You ever seen someone bomb and then look at your brother? Anyone ever seen that before?" like he just started like going in on us pretty hard afterwards. So all around, not a great experience. But we did that club multiple times after, and it went smoother and smoother after we knew what to expect after that.
Your guys' impression of him is like Norm Macdonald. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting from this guy.
If Norm Macdonald wasn't as charming and a little more rigid and
alcoholic?
Conjoined twins, they're attached at the chin. Never seen that before. Wow.
Shaggy Dog story.
I have to ask this. We'll end on these notes. I have some twin questions. I'm just gonna rapid fire. I didn't write. I didn't prepare. We're not that level yet. But I've noticed during this podcast that there is a hint of you guys knowing where the other person is going. Is there some kind of ESP kind of thing where it's like he knows what joke or what story I'm about to tell without any details?
Oh, it's I would relate it most, I think, to someone that's not a twin. The most relatable thing is it's like an old married couple where they've heard all the stories all the same times, and they're like, here's Harold again, rifling. This isn't the time or place, Harold. Like, oh my God, they're not gonna like this. Like,
it's because like especially with twins, I think people are a lot of the questions that we get are ESP or can you guys read each other's minds, that kind of stuff. But it's like nature and nurture, and a lot of our environments and our points of references are like identical. So like Jake saying, like an old married couple, even like an old friend, when you're like, oh, I know where he's going with this, we have like all of the same points of reference almost. So that's kind of that feeds into that similar thing of like we know where the other person's going, and we kind of try to use that in performance too, where it looks like we know, like where the other person's going, but it's kind of like the magic trick behind it, I guess, is that we just have a lot of similar points of reference that shoot us in a similar direction. So I don't know consciously what he's thinking, but it just happens so that we arrive at the same conclusion at the same time more often than not.
We're trying to hone it usually for stand-up. Like in improv, there's a lot of games that are like, there's one game called like Melt the Sugar. You're trying to get on the same page as the other improvisers. So that way, when you're doing a scene, you can be on the same page and work. So we've done a lot of improv, and then we're, twins with the same references to begin with. So it becomes very like, the references are all just there. We kind of know where it was going with like a small nod, basically.
Mm-hmm. So I think that appears like ESP sometimes, but it's not. it's unfortunately we can't read each other's minds.
What's that?
Now you guys just doing material on me. Twin fantasies. Have ladies ever tried to get you indulge in the twin fantasy?
Post shows or like a bachelorette party for like in the crowd, that'll happen where it's like, hey boy, like, what's up boys?
Kind of catcalling.
We've done
and then you get off stage and you're like, you about this? And they're like, ew.
We've done a lot of we have a lot of friends in like the LGBT community in Phoenix where like they'd put us on some shows and it'd be like gay bars.
Yeah.
And then
a little more forward.
Forward, like
they're dudes.
Boys. Like whenever girls are like, I was hit on after the show or like during the show, I'm like, I know how it goes. Like
I feel your pain.
There's some a lot of gay men are like, oh, you boys. I'm like, oh, God.
Look at these little twinks. We're like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, I played football. I'm not a twink, okay?
But, we do get some of that.
Would you guys ever live in a different city than each other or a different state?
It depends on the stand-up. I'm not against it. And, like, we live separately in Phoenix. Like, living together is kind of like, we both need space. Like anyone needs space, and we're doing it. We've stayed disconnected because of stand-up and comedy and our pursuits in that aspect. But it's like, I would love some space.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Some like healthy distance would definitely be like, so living in different cities, absolutely. But again, like the working relationship we have is still so tied. So kind of reiterating the same thing, but like. Also, on top of that, I feel like as a stand-up, doing it with the same person, you kind of have to grow together, because if we grew apart, maybe that would be either good or bad. Not sure how that would be for the stand-up. So that would also be like we spend time away and then come back together, kind of more different people than we are now.
Yeah.
Maybe that would add a blend to it as well. So to just thinking about it from a stand-up perspective, I think it could be positive and negative. So,
To go back,
pros and cons.
To go back to our one of our earlier conversations of like the hybrid of how do I think Zoom? Oh, that's our coffee machine. Sorry, if you hear that beeping.
Is that your jihad coffee?
So good. It's all we drink now.
Yeah.
I get paid in reals. So.
Yeah.
The hybrid and like moving forward into like a more like. How does the pandemic affect comedy afterwards? I think it's more easily like you can make content online, and at least we were exposed more to it with Twitch and YouTube and Zoom comedy shows, that I think it makes much more sense, and it'd be much easier now than it was previously to live in different cities and work remotely online. So I think it's way more possible than it was previously. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we'll end on this note. I've had you boys for an hour and a half, which is what a lot of women wish with the twins. Is there anything about being a twin? Because I have to ask these questions because I know people are going to want to know. Sure. They're like, why wouldn't you ask twins about this? Is there anything about twins that would be surprising to other people that we wouldn't expect that twins have to either deal with or experience?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and I just thought of like a negative thing first, but the first thing that I think people don't think about is you get seen as an entity a lot, like the twins or like the Yardley boys.
Yeah.
Which we kind of also put on ourselves with our branding, unfortunately.
Right. We didn't really understand that fully but like regardless, even if you're not doing comedy, if you're just a twin, you get seen as
the twins,
the thing, or like the entity. And I think over time that can build, like initially, it's I think for us, it was a lot of early attention from people. People were like, oh, they want to know more about being a twin. But then eventually you get good at least I feel like Jake and I got good at like deflecting the attention and being like, all right, we're more than just twins. We're more than just people that are born, identical.
Yeah.
So I guess that's maybe something that people don't think about when they approach twins or talk to twins as if the thing they saw either in porn or on movies is exactly what it's like to be a twin.
We'd love to add to the twin community. We're very underrepresented, I think.
Yeah.
I think Lindsay Lohan did a
number.
She wasn't even a twin, and she did Parent Trap. I mean,
how dare she?
Underutilized.
Taking twin jobs.
Yeah. If that movie was made now, they would for sure get canceled.
Yeah.
We should cancel her now. We can retro cancel, right?
Yeah, I think the best analogy is like an old couple. I think when you're younger, you don't really have that reference. But if you've been with someone for a while, like sometimes your friends, especially newer friends, are like, oh, I love the two of them. Like the two of them are like, you kind of just get grouped together as like, oh, I love that couple. That couple's fun. Like if you go on double dates or whatever with your significant other, it's similar to that, but with your friend, basically. Where they're just like, oh, those two, and you kind of, the identities just kind of bleed together a bit.
Yeah, like people expect if they invite me or if they invite Jake somewhere that the other person will be coming, respectively. Yeah. And you're like, oh, should I communicate with him? Like, it leads to a lot of, we also grew up, like our parents were divorced. So like there's a lot of communication in the custody that then would be like, our mom would be like, oh, I told your brother. And you're like, okay, well, you didn't tell me. I don't know which house we're going to or where we're going. So it became a lot of over communicating of like, did you tell Jake? Did you tell Alex? Did you tell the boys? Did you tell like your mom? Did you tell your dad? It was a lot of additional communication because as a twin, people think, oh, I told them. I told them so they know the information, expecting us to communicate with each other. Like the burden's put on us to communicate with one another to make sure we're all caught up.
People just expect I know things or whatever that they told him or whatever.
It's that whole mind thing.
Friends will be like, I'll show up somewhere. I'm like, just to hang out, watch a football game or something. And then they're like, oh, your brother's not coming? And I'm like, well, I'm here.
I'm a person too.
Am I not enough for you?
Yeah.
But that kind of shit happens.
Now I feel bad I booked you guys on the podcast together.
No, I mean, we also, especially in our stand-up, we want to be seen together, and like we enjoy doing it together. So no harm, no foul.
Well, listen, guys, I've appreciated you guys coming on here and defending the honor of all twins.
Zach and Cody for life. Olsen's, protect them at all costs. Lucas Brothers, we see you.
Where can people find everything that you guys have going on?
We keep everybody up to date on Yardley Comedy is our Instagram handle. So Yardley Comedy. And then we've just started through quarantine doing Twitch like we mentioned, and that is at Yardley Bros. So you can look at our Twitch at Yardley Bros.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on the show, guys. I hope to see you soon when I'm in Austin. You guys have a place to stay. Just don't take me up on that. No. But I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for having us, man.
Appreciate it, brother. Good seeing you.
You too.